is just a terrific movie, start to finish. Much of the credit goes to screenwriter Jonathan Latimer. He was undaunted by having to adapt a book that was clever, complex, and in some areas outside the bounds of the production code. Fearing's novel, like most of his books, was a split narrative between multiple first-person voices. While the movie is told entirely from George Stroud's point of view, in classic noir flashback style, the book progresses at a breakneck pace through the perspectives of various characters: George Stroud, Earl Janoff, Pauline, and Steve Hagen. Now, the movie drops most of Fearing's incisive social commentary, but Latimer makes up for it by injecting the offhanded wit that was his hallmark. In the 30s, Latimer was himself a writer of the so-called hard-boiled school, whose detective, Bill Crane, did as much boozing as he did sleuthing. On that score, he and Fearing were on common, if unsteady, ground. In the 1940s, Latimer found a comfortable niche in Hollywood as an ace screenwriter. And he had to finagle a few things to get this script past the censors. For example, the George Stroud of the novel is by no means innocent. Well, he didn't kill anybody, but he does carry on a long-term affair with Pauline, played wonderfully by Rita Johnson. And it wasn't only the code that demanded that be changed. It was director John Farrow. He'd converted to Catholicism at this point in his life, and he refused to emphasize Stroud's unhappiness with his married life and his eagerness to stray. And not just because Stroud's wife, Georgette, was played by the director's real-life wife, Maureen O'Sullivan. There was plenty more in the novel to incite the pious Farrow. Pauline is blatantly bisexual, and her chiding Janoff about his lavender relationship with right-hand man Steve Hagen is what sets Janoff off and leads to murder. The novel is fairly explicit about the relationship between Janoff and Hagen, played by that master of icy menace, George Macready. Right about this time, the actor was making a specialty of such sexually ambiguous roles. See also Gilda, My Name is Julia Ross, and Johnny Allegro. Farrow was so pleased with Jonathan Latimer's sensitive reworking of The Big Clock that from then on, he demanded him as the screenwriter for most of his films. In all, they made 9 pictures together in various genres, including 1949's fantastic Alias Nick Beale, a passion project of Farrow's in which Ray Milland makes a suave and debonair devil. And how about the uproarious supporting performance by Elsa Lanchester? Now, she didn't get this part merely because she was the wife of the star, although she and Charles Laughton had been married almost 20 years by this time. Lanchester, as an unconventional bohemian, was typecasting of the highest order, and she practically steals the show. Many reviewers thought her role was contrived for the film as comedy relief. The fact is, Kenneth Fearing based the character of Louise Patterson on his friend and colleague Alice Neal, one of the era's exceptional painters. Her portrait of the author, an extraordinary work, is part of the permanent collection in Manhattan's Museum of Modern Art. At the time Kenneth Fearing wrote The Big Clock, he was married to an artist, noted printmaker and engraver Nan Lurie. He wrote the manuscript in her Greenwich Village studio, where the couple lived the hand-to-mouth existence of most poets and artists. Sale of The Big Clock to a major publisher, and then the movies, brought a financial windfall that Fearing, unaccustomed to financial security, did his best to drink away. His newfound notoriety also earned the attention of the House Committee on Un-American Activities. Called to testify under oath whether or not he was a communist, Fearing replied, "Not yet." The simplest and most sardonic response to that question anyone ever offered. Despite the alcoholism, Fearing wrote several more novels and poetry during the 1950s. He died in 1961, a month before his 59th birthday. The Big Clock stands as Fearing's most well-known work of fiction, but it's the only one that'll ever be featured on Noir Alley. As for screenwriter Jonathan Latimer, he's going to be a fixture here in the Noir Alley Saloon. In fact, next week I'll be presenting an RKO picture featuring another of his patented, fast-paced, wisecracking scripts. It's Nocturne from 1946, produced by Alfred Hitchcock's protege, Joan Harrison, and starring George Raft, Lynn Barry, and 10 beautiful brunettes, all with a motive for murder. Until then, keep the conversation going on our Facebook page and Twitter feed. And see you back here next week. Set your clocks.